Welcome back to This Is Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. I still have with me Professor Bola Akintola, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Professor Anthony Killer, Director at the Center for International and Advanced Professional Studies, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, is enough. Well, thank you very much, Prof. and Professor Killer, and also Yemi Adamolekun. Well, three major issues that we have looked at. First, Professor Patutomi, talking about elections, legitimacy, and the poor performance of government. And also we had, Dr. Ungu of the Lagos Business School talking about Nigeria's debt profile, removal of fuel subsidy, the fiscal crisis that Nigeria faces, and issues of trust, leadership, and accountability. And then we had Mr. Farin Loye of the National Emergency Management Agency talking about this rainy season that is upon us, that would begin, as they predicted, by Saturday of the first week of April, and whether Nigeria is prepared or not for flooding, for radical changes in the weather, and also for all the challenges that come with the rainy season. Let me start with you, Yemi Adamolekun.
Let's see. Let's start with flooding. I'm not sure that Lagos is doing anything differently. So I like the fact that he says people are responding to moving, given the fact that their living areas will be affected. But the fundamental problem with flooding in Lagos is that we've built over drainage lines. The Lagos State Ministry of Environment are aware of where those houses are, but just hasn't done anything about it. So until Lagos is determined to solve this problem once and for all, we will continue to have these challenges. I'll take a place like Parkview. There's more land that has been reclaimed to expand Parkview. And if I'm not mistaken, my understanding is that two of the two drainage lines to take water out of Parkview, one of them has been blocked in that process. So, I mean, it's a no-brainer that Parkview is going to have a bigger problem with flooding this year than it had last year. And so I think these are the issues that the current administration, which has gotten a second term, needs to be challenged with in actually how do we solve these problems permanently, not just putting Band-Aid every year by moving people or making announcements. And then also, I mean, the cost of it, the fact that you have water sitting on roads also affects the quality of our roads. It's dangerous for driving because you have water filling potholes that tires then get stuck in or cars literally drop in. And who's then responsible for the cost and damage, not only to cars, but also to human beings? And I think these are the real issues. Maybe if people started documenting these things properly and holding Lagos State accountable for damage to their motor vehicles and wear and tear on their body for potholes that were covered with water. I'll jump to your conversation with Patutomi, and I think for me, the clarity that we need to establish, and I'm certainly with Professor Utomi on this, is that yes, INEC declared a winner, but it's the same process that allows people to go to court. So we can't continue in one breath to say go to court, and in another breath say we have a president-elect, let's just move on. Obviously, the election is contested. Now, unfortunately, because of the nature of our legal system, the legal process is not completed before inauguration. So the president-elect will be inaugurated on May 29th by law. But I think it's quite disingenuous for us to want to focus on that and the fact that inauguration will go on, transition committee will go on, which is also now part of our laws, but that anybody that wants to talk about the fact that they feel that the process was unfair, they feel that the process, not just unfair, the process has fundamental legal issues, and wants to talk about citizens expressing their frustration with that, citizens protesting to express their frustration, that should in some way be silenced or they should be quiet because we have a president-elect. I completely agree with Professor Utomi that we're in a democracy. They are allowed to say the fact that the process was illegal, as some people put it, simply because INEC did not follow its own laws, needs to be discussed. Now, what the framework provides for is for people to go to court to challenge that. And yes, while that is agreed upon, it should not be dismissed when it comes up in conversation. I just want to be clear about that. And because I think it's quite, not only disingenuous, I think it's also very I don't even want to use the word, anyway, but it's quite disingenuous, I think is where I leave it. Yeah, this will be my initial comments for now.
Okay, let me come to you.
Oh yeah, lastly, sorry, fuel subsidy.
Okay.
Can I speak on fuel subsidy real quickly?
Please go ahead, yes.
So Occupy Nigeria was January 2012. So 10 years later was last year, and nothing new had changed. We're still wasting money on turnaround maintenance on our refineries. Diezani is in England. I'm not quite sure that she's being prosecuted for anything. We're wasting money daily on fuel subsidy, 60 million liters per day, or some ridiculous amount that even the people in the industry says make no sense. We've tacitly lifted subsidy in a way, even though some claim that if it's fully lifted, it will go as high as 700 naira per liter. But people are selling at 200, 250, 300, different rates across the country. Every now and again, the agency, I forget what they're called, will wake up and say, oh, we're going to prosecute anybody not selling at the official rate. Then they'll keep quiet and it will go on. So the point that the gentleman from LBS made, which is quite valid, is that obviously there's no trust in the process. Now, if subsidy is then removed with an announcement, I'm not even quite sure that how Nigerians will react at this point, because it's almost like, what subsidy are you talking about? I mean, the image you're showing is quite apt. People are we're still queuing for fuel, and these issues are still there. So from the Jonathan administration to the other attempts to remove subsidy and then have palliatives in process, until that transition is done either with that, I'm not quite sure that we're even honest about that conversation. But I think it's an easier conversation to have, I believe now, because people are already feeling the effect of subsidy. So the song and dance of the government speaks to their own dishonesty, as Professor Akintola would always say about the issue. And I think that's really the point I want to land on.
Okay.
That subsidy in a lot of ways has been removed.
You already mentioned Professor Akintola. Let me come to you quickly, Professor Akintola.
Thank you, Ruben. You see, let me begin with Professor Utomi. Professor Utomi didn't speak like an obedient. He spoke like a core academic analyst. He didn't deal with people. He dealt with issues. And I'm particularly glad that he put his analysis in what he has called mental narrative by asking, for instance, what really is the purpose, the objective of, election processes. I quite agree with the 4 main points on which he capitalized. First of all, he did say that democracy in Nigeria is not stricto sensu democracy. That is more or less of a system of manipulations here and there. And there is no way anybody can dispute that. It is a truism. He did say that election can also be a manifestation of a coup d'etat. The French distinguish between coup and then a coup d'etat. Whoever talks about either coup or coup d'etat, the issue is that you try to remove the government. By the time you are using force, etc., that is where you will now have the ECOWAS, the African Union, talking about unconstitutional change of government. When you go to Mali, you go to other Francophone countries, where the people now decide to ensure the removal of government, it is also coup. So I quite agree with Professor Utomi that coup d'etat is not just by manu militari or by use of force. An election in itself can be. I also agree with him that, he is trying to say, in essence, that the election in Nigeria cannot be considered as legitimate. Now, when he gave us an answer, an explanation to your question, especially whether he had faith in the judiciary. No, I so much admire the two exemplary cases he referred to. He mentioned some of his friends, that he met, that he related with when he was in the University of Benin, mentioning another friend of mine too, Kemi Olupona, whose father believed in unity, using religion to foster unity. Kemi Olupona actually is completely detribalized. So the group of people Patu Tomi had been related with, as distinct from his Patito gang, these are people that are very patriotic, advocating, a Nigeria that will be completely free from political chicanery, from irrationalism. So I like that. And when he now referred to Hitler, for instance, how, for instance, he would want Paris to be destroyed. And having read a lot of literature on that during my own doctoral dissertation, and he was mentioning this, I was particularly glad in that, look, when you have people dealing with critical issues to address national questions, there's no way, for instance, when I think it is the environmentalist, Ibrahim, who was saying Nigeria's problem is solvable, and I moved to his own position there, solvable, and he's now raising the issue of leadership and restructuring. I will agree with him from that perspective that, look, there is no problem in Nigeria that is not solvable. But I take my distance from all of them, all these analysis suggestions. Are the Nigerian people, at the level of leadership, ready for all these recommendations they are making? The people of Nigeria themselves, they are aiding and abetting all this. People steal money recklessly in Nigeria. They go to their village, settle down, the community will honor them. This is the issue. Now, when, for instance, we are talking about removal of subsidy, etc. alone, scarcity of petrol products, the tariffs, we are talking about electricity tariffs. We Nigerians are the one also aiding the people, to frustrate whatever is put in place. So, in essence, when we take loan, we are talking about increase in our level of indebtedness. I will agree with the suggestion that, look, how do we apply the money we take as loan for greater productivity? I know that is the problem.
Prof? Hello, Prof, can you hear me?
Yes, I have stopped.
Well, let me at this point bring in Professor Kila, because we still have one more topic to take, but briefly. Professor Kila, I don't want to ask you where you are in any part of the world, but good to see you.
Good to see you. I'm sitting on a chair. The three main issues you brought up are fascinating issues. Let us start with the one that was treated by Professor Tomi, the situation of governance and legitimacy, which is a very important question for the Institute of Democracy itself. Generally, it's a seminar conversation that can take hours, but let us limit it to specifically where we are in the country today. We're in a situation where we have not more than 30% of eligible voters that have voted, and we have a president-elect that has been elected by less than 30% of the vote. So physiologically, there is the risk of legitimacy because more voters did not vote for the winner. That is a risk that comes with the first past the poll system that we're operating, this uninominal system. So that's a given. It is compounded by the fact that while some people consider the election free and fair, a lot of other people consider the election to be fraught with irregularities. So, we have a tension going on in the country. My take is that we all need to work together to get clarity, logic, and then legitimacy together. I say together because it is in the interest of the winner to let everybody see that the victory is a legitimate victory. It is also in the interest of whoever loses. I know that it's not politically correct to use the word loser anymore, but whoever did not win, to get closure, to know that I did not win not because I was cheated, I did not win because my points are not correct, but because that's the system. Luckily, unluckily for us, Nigeria sadly integrated the judicial system as part of the electoral system. So the last phase of the whole electoral system, and it is important that we consider that seriously, is for the judiciary to pronounce, to see the points that are being contended by the parts that have gone to court. And it is a good thing, I believe, that those other parties who dispute the elections have gone to court rather than take to the streets. So they've done it in a civilized way, or in a peaceful way, rather. So they've gone to court, at least in the legal way. Let's put it that way, because let's be careful. Protests can be peaceful as well. So they've gone to court in a peaceful way to seek redress. Now we have to focus on the judiciary. I believe, and let me use this opportunity to say, I'm part of a group that is advocating for the judiciary to play an extra role, given where we are now. The judiciary needs to make sure that judgment is clear, it is understood by everybody, it is transparent, and it is clear to everybody that that is the reality. Two ways to do that, for example, is to make sure that the process, the electoral cases in court, are televised live, or at least televised on TV, maybe not live, so that anybody without going to the court can actually see how the process is done. So that when they say trials are public, it can be interpreted to mean people can see it on television, given where we're in the world today. That is something the CJN can use the discretion to do. Another point, I believe, to help legitimacy is also perhaps for the court to roll up their sleeves and make sure all cases are adjudicated before 29th of May, which is the scheduled day for the swearing in. I believe those things are possible because the process has been digitalized, so you can save time. And if there is vision, it is very possible to do it. I belong to a group that is advocating for that. And I strongly believe that it is doable where there is vision, because we need to understand that it is necessary for people to see the system as not concocted by a few wise men, or as Patitomi puts it, some stronger men. We need a system that is clear and is legitimate, both for the winners and who did not win. So that is a crucial thing for the electoral process. So there's a petition going on, and I hope people will join to sign that petition on commonvoiceng.com. That's a bit of a slip in there. For the fuel subsidy in, Yemi Adeosun brings a date in mind to me. 12 years ago, the Occupy, or was it 12 years ago, 2012, the Occupy Nigeria against fuel subsidy. The same issues that were being discussed then are still being discussed now. So that is a sad note. But one thing our viewers need to remember is that all the three top candidates, be Abubakar Atiku, Peter Obi, and Bola Tinubu, have all agreed that they were going to remove fuel subsidy. What is going to happen about it is the next problem. There was a clip that was played of the Labour Minister, Dr. Ngige, who I think must be said, he has a rather annoying disposition for a public servant. He feels irritated, as if we're disturbing him when we talk about matters of the state. I hope the incoming administration would also take care to choose people who can empathize with the problem of the state. The problem is still on the table. It's not resolved. There's no point for the minister to be feeling as if we're disturbing him if we ask him to talk about matters of Nigeria. That attitude, body language is, I guess, what it's called, is not a good one. We have an issue with subsidy. The Labour union are right to say that what's going to happen when these prices go up. The government is proposing a 10% increase when the cost of energy, in this case, the cost of petrol, is going on by what? About 500%? Somehow, you don't even need to be an economist or to have done econometrics to see that the arithmetic, not math, is not turning well. So it's not a good situation to be. Let's see what's going to happen. It's either we're going to survive in one way or the other, because what needs to be done has not been put in place. The answer is mass transportation, reduction of individuals using car, so that we can all save, so that in a way, instead of filling up one tank, 10 of us, 20 of us, we fill up the tank of one bus.
Well, Professor Killer, let's take our final topic, but the point you were making about resolving election litigations, petitions before May 29. Well, maybe you will still need to amend Section 285 of the 1999 Constitution, because timelines would seem to be part of the problem, and that's a constitutional matter with regard to election petitions that are complex, heavily contentious. But that's another issue. Let's go to the U.S., where supporters of former U.S. President Donald Trump gathered outside Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, Florida, on Thursday night, waving pro-Trump flags and singing patriotic songs. Earlier on Thursday, Trump was indicted by a Manhattan grand jury, prosecutors and defense lawyers said, making him the first former American president to face a criminal charge and jolting his bid to retake the White House next year. Well, Donald Trump has reacted to the development, calling the indictment political persecution and election interference at the highest level in history. He denies any wrongdoing and adds that the so-called witch hunt will backfire on Joe Biden and radical Democrats in 2024. The former president is expected to surrender to the authorities next week, after which the content of the indictment will be made public, specifically on Tuesday, the coming Tuesday, that is. Well, Professor Kila, let me come back to you quickly as we try to wrap it all up. Your take on this.
Well, I think, Trump is a man of many parts. It's fascinating that we look at Donald Trump today, as president of ex-president, and it is said of him he's going to be the first president to be indicted. But the truth is, before he became president, Donald Trump was a colorful character that bragged about his prowess of his seduction, money, sport, being macho. And in a way, this is his past catching up with him, whether true or false, because it's not like he doesn't know these people at all. This is what we're seeing, and the fact is, his past is catching up with him. If we want to analyze it and we want to do a comparative analysis, bring it to Nigerian case, what we're seeing is that in some societies, nobody's truly above the law. In some societies, you cannot wish away history. The past matters and the law matters. By the way, it is important to note that with all this going on, this does not guarantee that Trump does not remain popular. It does not translate automatically to the fact that he might still not win the primary. As long as he can stay out of jail or convicted that impedes him from contesting, it really means nothing. It's a damage, but he has sort of overcome this kind of situation before.
Okay,
and for
Professor.
objectivity, it must be said that others have gone through this kind of things before. But this is the Trump I know. Let's put it that way.
Okay, Yemi Adamolekun, any lessons from the Trump debacle unfolding in the United States? Yemi Adamolekun, are you
Really,
there?
is that a politician's base? Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead.
Excellent. I think the main lesson really is that a politician's base would always be their base. And I think it was one of the things we talked about leading up to the current elections. Bola Ahmed Tinubu had every scandal, not every, I mean, just different questions around his age, around the drug conviction in the US, around activities in Lagos State. But the point was that regardless of what you say or didn't say about him, his base was always going to vote for him regardless. And I think that's what we see with Trump. It'll be interesting to see what this leads into him declaring for president, which he, I mean, still continuing with his presidential race. The law doesn't stop him from running for president, and what that looks like for the American elections. But the critical lessons in also that the law works. Now, yes, and I think that's, in a sense, almost the beauty of it, that yes, he's been indicted, but that doesn't stop him from running because their law doesn't preclude it. However, in Nigeria, if the law actually indicted any of our many politicians that should be indicted, the law then precludes them from running. But there's not as much faith in our legal system, in our judiciary, that lets people know that there will be consequences for bad behavior. As Professor Killer said, there's nothing about Trump that should surprise anyone, given his history.
Yeah, in Nigeria, you have Section 131 of the 1999 Constitution dealing with qualification for the office of president. Well, Professor Akintola, quickly, Donald Trump.
Yeah, you see, privileges and immunities do not in any way place a president or any individual above the law. In the United States, institutions are just working very, very well. And with the indictment, when Donald Trump is talking about witch hunting, political persecution, far from it. Television news clearly showed Donald Trump in the White House watching, the assault on the Congress, on the National Assembly. We saw that one. So if he did not take any weapon to attack himself, at least there is concrete evidence visibly from a physiognomical perspective. He aided and abetted that. So in this case, from that one alone, prima facie, I cannot see how he can be talking about witch hunting. So I think that his indictment will necessarily require a redefinition of his policy of America First and MAGA. MAGA is Make America Great Again. He cannot, at least with all his policies of use of force, to impose his own view of the world as an individual and expect the whole world to follow. I think the indictment is a very welcome development, and that shows the greatness of the American people.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Akintola. Thank you very much, Professor Killer. And thank you very much, Yemi Damalekun. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.